So I want to share one simple idea with you tonight, and that is that what makes us weak makes us strong, and what makes us weird also makes us wonderful. I know a little bit about being weird. When people see me for the first time, they have one question: Dave, how tall are you? The answer to that is I'm 6'6", but I'm 6'9" in heels. And one of the problems with being born in a trailer park and born to a family that doesn't have a lot of money is that when you grow tall, you grow faster than your family's ability to get you pants. So for my whole life, I always had what we call high water pants or floods. They never made it all the way down to my shoes. But my mom didn't want me to feel bad, so she told me they were capri pants and they were coming back in style. I'm 6'6", but my wife is 5'3". If you wonder what that's like, just realize that in our relationship, deodorant is much more important than breath mints. That's what I call a two-laugher. People get it, and then other people are like, oh, the deodorant, got it. I've always been weird. I've always stuck out, but I wasn't always happy about it. I didn't see it as a blessing. I saw it as a curse. I didn't see it as a strength. I saw it as a weakness. What about you? What makes you different? What do you want to change about yourself? What do other people tell you are your weaknesses? I think we've been taught that if we want to be happy, successful, and fulfilled, we need to find and fix our weaknesses, and we need to be normal and fit in. But what if that was wrong? What if what makes us weird makes us wonderful, and what makes us weak is what makes us strong? What if we're punishing the wrong things? Why are we punishing conformity and the perception of perfection? What if we've got it all wrong? Scientists say that we all have what's called negativity bias. It means we see what's wrong and we miss what's right. Imagine I had a big stain on my shirt, big stain, right on the front of my shirt. Every one of you would be staring at that stain. You wouldn't be able to see anything else. And sooner or later, you'd even have to tell the person next to you, check it out, big stain. No, don't look now. Don't look now. He's looking over in a second. And I don't care how positive and how encouraging you are, there's not a single person in this room who'd be looking at that stain and thinking to themselves, that Dave Rendall, he's doing a good job. Because 98% of that shirt is stain-free. But what's important is that it would be true. 98% is an A+. 98% of my shirt would be stain-free, but we'd focus on the 2%. We see what's wrong, and we miss what's right. Even little kids do it. We don't have to teach people. It's natural. I was watching TV one morning with my 2-year-old. We were up at about 6 in the morning. She woke up before everybody else. How many of you have ever watched Dora the Explorer with your children? But I can get into any TV show. I'm a little bit ashamed of it, but it's the freak factor, so I can't be ashamed of anything. And I can get into any TV show. So we're watching Dora the Explorer, and she starts talking to me. And I'm like, quiet. We're about to make it to the bridge, and we need to answer the troll's riddle, or we're never going to make it to the other side. And she keeps talking, and I'm like, we need to hear what the map is to Candy Mountain, or we're not going to be able to get the treasure at the end. But she keeps talking, and finally I focus on what she says, and she says, Daddy, is your tummy full? And I said, no, honey, we haven't even had breakfast. Quiet, we're watching Dora. But then she says, Daddy, is your tummy full again? And I look at her, and she's not looking at me, she's looking at this. And she pokes it a couple times, and she asks me, do you got a baby in there? I've got skinny arms. I've got skinny legs. I've got a neck so skinny that I have to buy my clothes off the internet. But my daughter saw the one thing that was wrong and pointed it out. We see what's wrong, and we miss what's right. Friends of mine had a son named James, and they sent him to school, sent him to kindergarten. And within 2 weeks, they got contacted by the teacher, and she said, I think your son has a mental disability, and I think he has oppositional defiant disorder. You need to have him tested. They were educated, professional, successful people, so they took this very seriously, and they took their son to the psychiatrist, had a whole battery of tests done. 2 anxious weeks later, the results came back with good news. Your son doesn't have any sort of mental disability, and he doesn't have oppositional defiant disorder. And actually what he does have is a genius-level IQ. There's a philosopher named Seneca who said there's no great genius without a touch of madness. And one of the problems in our world is that if you have genius, people tend to miss it and only see the madness. When I was a kid, I got in trouble for 3 things. I couldn't sit still, be quiet, or do what I was told. Teachers didn't like me very much, and they called me obnoxious and rebellious and inappropriate and immature. They told me I had no self-control and no self-discipline. And that if I couldn't learn to overcome those weaknesses and learn to sit still and be quiet and do what I was told, I was going to end up homeless and living in a van down by the river. Sooner or later, they'd give up on me and they'd send me to the principal's office. And I remember I was in 3rd grade, I was 8 years old, and they sent me to the principal's office and he sat me down on his lap, which seems questionable now looking back on it. And he told me, with the best of intentions, he was trying to help me. I'm not arguing that people have the wrong intentions. I'm saying we're doing the wrong thing when we try to help people. He said, Dave, there's 3 kinds of bad people, really bad people, and people who are too far gone. And what he was warning me, he said I was really bad and I was on the verge of being too far gone. What he was saying is, Dave, you're on the wrong path, and at the end of the wrong path is a cliff, and once you fall off, you don't get to come back. You need to learn to sit still and be quiet and do what you're told. But as an adult, at some point, and sort of by accident, after years and years of trying and failing to sit still and be quiet and do what I was told, I realized I kept being chosen, I kept being selected, and I was starting to get paid to do 3 things. Stand up, not sit down. Talk, not be quiet. And run my own business, not do what anybody else tells me to do. And in that moment, I realized that what seemed like my weaknesses were actually my strengths. The reason I call this the freak factor is because what I want you to know is that your freak factor is the unique combinations of strengths and weaknesses that make you different and make you powerful. And unfortunately, our society tries to limit those things. They try to focus on the weakness. They try to focus on conformity. And I want to give you a different way today. Ken Robinson says, many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not. Because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. People take our strengths and they call them weaknesses. And then we miss our strengths because we think they're weaknesses. And it changes the trajectory of our lives because we think we're broken and we're not whole. Everything has these 2 sides to it. Everything has strength and weakness. Maybe you're too loud. Maybe you're too quiet. Maybe you're too messy. Maybe you're too clean. My mother-in-law has a little bit of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. But she says, actually, it's not OCD. It should be CDO because it should be in alphabetical order. And what I'm telling you, and you heard it from Susan Cain, is that if someone tells you you're too quiet, maybe you're not quiet enough. If somebody tells you you're too loud, maybe you should get louder. If someone tells you you're too messy, maybe you should get messier. If somebody tells you that you're too neat, maybe you should join the National Association of Professional Organizers and get even neater. To understand this connection between good and bad, it's good to be tall. Scientists have shown in numerous studies that tall people make more money per year, per inch of height, over 6 feet tall. If you want to give me money for being tall, I will take the money. I'm a college professor and I'm a speaker, and what people do is they also give tall people IQ points that they don't deserve just for being tall. It's good to be tall. But I travel a lot for speaking. I just got back from doing 29 presentations in 3 weeks in Western Australia. And to get to Western Australia, you have to fly for 26 hours and spend 36 total hours traveling. And in order to get on the first plane, it starts like this. I see the flight attendant. They take one look at me and they say, "Sir, watch your head," which is hard to do if you've ever tried. And so to get in the plane, it starts like this. But I don't get to stand up once I'm inside. It just stays like this because that's all the bigger the plane is. And I get decent seats because I fly a lot. But sooner or later, I have to go to the bathroom. And if it's like this in the middle of the plane, the bathrooms are always on the side of the plane, and they're even smaller. And so I get into the bathroom, and I close the door behind me. But the toilet's over there. But I'm over here. And I want to get closer, but the ceiling goes like this. And as I try to get closer, all it does is push my head closer and closer to the toilet. which on a 16-hour international flight with hundreds and hundreds of people, you don't want to be any closer to the toilet than you have to be. And I'm not good at yoga and I don't practice, but I try to get in there. And I realize I'm getting closer, but the right parts aren't getting closer. And I'm trying not to fall because the plane is bumping, but I'm holding on with one hand, but I need the other hand for something else. And then I realize something. Wait a second. Over here, there's a sink. Yeah. That's a whole lot higher and a whole lot closer. That seems custom made for what we need to do here. I've been married for 18 years to my wife. We have 3 lovely daughters. They're 11, 9, and 6. Those are funny names, but we really like them. And I wear the pink shoes and the pink socks and the pink belt and the pink watch because they're gradually turning me into a woman. And so once I've told people that, they're like, hey, why don't you embrace it and just sit down? But the problem is, in the bathroom, I can't turn around. So the only way to sit down in the airplane bathroom would be to exit and then back it in. It's great to be tall, except when it's not. And I don't get to keep the advantages of height without also dealing with the disadvantages. George Eliot said, every limit is a beginning as well as an ending. And I want to show you the beginnings that come with the limits that we have. A good way to understand this is side effects. Every medicine has a side effect. And the only way to reduce the side effect of the medicine is to reduce the benefit of the medicine. And what we have to be careful of with people, because everybody has side effects, is that when we try to reduce their weaknesses, we end up reducing their strengths. Peter Drucker said, strong people always have strong weaknesses too. Where there are peaks, there are valleys. What makes us weak also makes us strong. What makes us weird also makes us wonderful. I want you to learn tonight the power of embracing the peaks and the valleys in yourself and in the people that you love. We think, but some things are just disabilities, Dave. Some things are just wrong. Some things just need to be fixed. Dyslexia is a problem. It gives us trouble reading and writing. It makes it hard to succeed in school. And we've learned that if you can't succeed in school, you won't succeed in life. But they were doing a study of millionaires in the United Kingdom and discovered that 50% of them had dyslexia, even though only 10% of people in the general population have dyslexia. They were doing a study of entrepreneurs in the United States and discovered that 33% of them have dyslexia. Ingvar Kamprad is the founder of IKEA, and he's a billionaire, one of the world's richest people, and he has dyslexia. Richard Branson is the billionaire founder of the Virgin series of companies, and he's a billionaire, and he has dyslexia. And you think, well, Dave, maybe they aren't as excited about having dyslexia as you are. But they asked Richard Branson that question, how has dyslexia affected your success? And he said, strangely, I think my dyslexia has helped. We succeed because of our weaknesses, not in spite of them. What makes us weak makes us strong. What makes us weird makes us wonderful. Paul Orfila was so dyslexic he got kicked out of 4 high schools and then was fired from 4 family-owned businesses. His own mother and father and brothers and sisters wouldn't work with him. So he started his own business called Kinko's, and he recently sold it for $2.4 billion. And he says this, I think everyone should have dyslexia. Millionaires, billionaires, entrepreneurs. What scientists are starting to realize is that people with dyslexia don't have broken brains, they have different brains. And the same thing that keeps them, the weakness that keeps them from doing well with reading and writing, is connected to a strength that helps them to do better in adult life than a lot of the rest of us do. Jimmy Kimmel was hosting the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He's a late-night talk show host. He's a comedian. And at one point at the dinner, he went to the podium and he said, I just want to thank Mr. Mills, my high school history teacher, who told me I'd never amount to anything if I didn't stop screwing around. Mr. Mills, I'm about to high-five the President of the United States of America. And then he high-fived the President of the United States of America, and he came back to the podium and said, eat it, Mills. Jimmy Kimmel didn't succeed by stopping screwing around. He succeeded by screwing around more, becoming more silly, more ridiculous, more immature, and more childish. He realized that what made him weird made him wonderful, that what seemed to make him weak also made him strong. I ran a 40-mile ultra marathon one time, and my brother-in-law told me, Dave, you're crazy and awesome. And I think in order to be awesome, we have to be a little bit crazy. But what he was praising me for was being very, very, very active. But I'd always been very, very, very active. But when you're in school and you're very, very, very active, they call it hyperactive, and they give you medicine to fix it. But once I did more, once I went farther, once I embraced my weaknesses and did more of what people told me to do less of, I started to get praised for what they used to criticize and rewarded for what they used to punish. When I was a kid, I fell down and I broke my arm. When I was 12, I broke it very badly, both bones completely through. It came up like this. They put me in a cast for 3 months, and when it was over, I thought I was fine. But 8 years later, I was in college trying to play the guitar, and I couldn't quite put my fingers on the strings properly. And that's when I realized 8 years later, I couldn't turn my arm over. I couldn't turn it flat like you're supposed to. And that's when I realized why I struggled in the drive-thru for so many years. Because I could pay just fine, but when they went to give me the change, all I had was this. And they'd say, well, turn your hand over, and I would. They'd say, but reach it out. And they thought I was messing with them because I'm so tall they couldn't even see my head. They just thought I could reach in there and take what I wanted. My sister-in-law said I should get a basket on a stick and just reach it in there. But a few years later, I was in Australia, and I drove in Australia for the first time. And in Australia, they drive on the left-hand side of the road and the right-hand side of the car. And the first place I drove was to McDonald's. Because I got to reach this hand out, and I paid with cash because I wanted change. And the lesson there is that when I changed situations, my disability was still there, my weakness was still there, but it didn't matter. When we put ourselves and other people in the right situations, the weaknesses disappear and they're replaced by strengths. Thorkill Sohn has an organization called Specialister, and they do software testing. And he hires people with autism on purpose because 2 of the symptoms of autism are hyperfocus and the desire to do things over and over and over again. And you know what software testing requires? Hyperfocus and doing the same thing over and over again. Michael Phelps is one of the most decorated, he is the most decorated Olympian of all time. He also has ADHD. And his mom recognized that hyperactivity isn't a disability when you're in the swimming pool. It's called dedication. It's called determination. It's called being an Olympic champion. When we help people find the right spot, we help them to succeed not by fixing their weaknesses, but by giving them an environment that puts a spotlight on their strengths. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is broken. It's leaning. It's always been leaning. But in the 1930s, Mussolini decided this wasn't a good representation of his country, and he ordered that it be fixed, but it didn't work. And that was a very lucky thing for the city of Pisa, because millions of people have traveled millions of miles and spent millions of dollars to see a tower that leans. The weakness is the strength. What makes it weird is what makes it wonderful. And the people who run the tower now say that it's because of its inclination that the tower has become the object of very special attention. And their goal now is to preserve the current tilt. We're busy in life trying to get people to straighten up, when what we need to do is allow them to lean. I want you to work together with me tonight and in the future to create a freak revolution in our homes, in our schools, in our workplaces. To create a world where people understand that what makes us weak is what makes us strong, that what makes us weird is what makes us wonderful. E.E. Cummings says, we do not believe in ourselves until someone reveals to us that deep inside is something valuable, worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch. You can be that person who reveals to somebody who thinks they're weak and weird that they're in fact strong and wonderful. We need to stop fitting in and start freaking out. Thank you.